Along the western reaches of the Shan Mountains lies Kyrgyzstan. Until 1991, it remained part of the Soviet Union. The Kyrgyz carried red Soviet passports and were Soviet citizens in every legal sense. For generations, they spoke Russian alongside a Turkic language, practiced Islam, and lived within the vast Soviet system. Judged by geography, religion, language, or modern politics, this Central Asian people would seem to have little connection with China. Yet after the Soviet Union collapsed and Central Asia's geopolitical map was redrawn, a striking pattern emerged. Among the 5 Central Asian republics, Kyrgyzstan showed an unusual desire to cultivate closer ties with China, not only through trade and border agreements, but through history. At international forums and cultural events, Kyrgyz officials and scholars raised a remarkable claim. The Kyrgyz possessed a natural affinity with China because part of their ancestry could be traced to the Han Dynasty. The idea also gained attention inside China, where some even described the Kyrgyz as descendants of Han Chinese. This claim does not refer merely to Chinese ancestry in a broad geographical or political sense, a category that includes many ethnic groups. It refers specifically to Han Chinese ancestry. At first glance, this seems almost impossible. Why would a Muslim people of Central Asia, traditionally associated with pastoral life beneath the Tian Shan Mountains, claim Han Chinese blood? Is this simply a modern political narrative created to attract support from a powerful eastern neighbor? Or is it the memory of a genuine migration that began more than 2,000 years ago? When we open China's official histories, the records of the Grand Historian, the Book of Han, and the New Book of Tang, we find a story that began 22 centuries ago and continued across dynasties. A supposed kinship was recorded long before modern China and Kyrgyzstan existed. And when we turn to 21st century DNA research, unusual genetic results suggest another connection, one linking the Han frontier with the frozen forests of Siberia. Today, we will unravel this 2,000-year-old legend and the genetic mystery within it. To understand this story, we must return to the 1st century BCE, when the Han Empire was locked in a prolonged struggle with the great nomadic power of the northern steppe, the Xiongnu. In the autumn of 99 BCE, Emperor Wu prepared another major campaign. Li Guangli, the elder brother of one of the emperor's favorite consorts, was ordered to lead 30,000 cavalry north from Jiankun and attack the Xiongnu's wise king of the right. A young general named Li Ling was also assigned to the campaign. But instead of receiving an independent command, he was ordered to lead the troops he had trained as a supply force for Li Guangli. Li Ling refused. He belonged to the Li Clan of Longxi. Within the Han military world, that name carried both prestige and tragedy. Li Ling's grandfather was Li Guang, the legendary flying general, whose reputation was said to terrify Xiongnu horsemen. For generations, the Li family had defended the northern frontier. Its members were experienced soldiers with long records of service. Yet fortune repeatedly turned against them at decisive moments. Li Guang fought in campaign after campaign, but never received the noble title he believed he had earned. During his final expedition, he became lost on the steppe and failed to reach the main battlefield. Faced with a military inquiry, he killed himself rather than submit to humiliation. The phrase, Li Guang was never ennobled, later became a symbol of talent denied its reward. For his family, it was a shadow over the entire clan. Li Ling inherited his grandfather's courage, pride, and military skill. He also inherited the family's need to prove itself. He longed for a decisive victory that would erase its humiliations and demonstrate the value of the Longxi Li clan to the ruler of the Han Empire. But fortune had not finished with the family. Li Ling's father, Li Guang's eldest son, died young. Li Guang's third son, angered by the circumstances of his father's death, attacked and injured a powerful general favored by the emperor. This provoked the general's nephew, the celebrated commander Hua Chubing. During an imperial hunt, Hua shot and killed him. Emperor Wu, unwilling to punish one of his greatest commanders, announced that the death had been a hunting accident. The second generation of the Li family passed its years in waiting and restraint. By the time Li Ling came of age, the family still possessed its military reputation. As a young man, he entered the imperial court and served among the emperor's attendants. Skilled in riding and archery, he was known for sharing the hardships of ordinary soldiers. Emperor Wu believed he resembled his grandfather and assigned him to train 5,000 infantrymen near Jiuquan and Changye. Their task was to defend the frontier against the Xiongnu. So when Li Ling finally received orders connected to a major northern campaign, he had no intention of carrying supplies for another commander. He entered the palace and requested an independent operation. His men, he argued, had been selected from the brave fighters of the Qing and Chu regions. They were trained with powerful bows and crossbows. He needed no cavalry. With only 5,000 infantrymen, he claimed, he could penetrate Xiongnu territory and draw away the main army of the Chanyu, the Xiongnu ruler. Emperor Wu understood that Li Ling did not want to serve beneath Li Guangli. He told him bluntly that no cavalry were available. Li Ling persisted. "I do not need cavalry," he replied. "With a small force, I am willing to fight a much larger army. Give me 5,000 infantrymen, and I will march toward the court of the Chanyu." On the open steppe, cavalry did more than charge. Horsemen provided reconnaissance, pursuit, supply protection, and rapid withdrawal. Infantry could hold a position with shields, bows, and crossbows, but could not easily escape mounted enemies across open ground. Once its supplies were cut off, an isolated force of 5,000 infantrymen would have little chance of returning to the Han frontier. For reasons that remain unclear, Emperor Wu approved the plan. He also ordered an older general to lead a supporting force and meet Li Ling during the campaign. But because of disputes and changes in deployment, the promised support force disappeared from the operation. Li Ling was left alone. Driven by family pride and the need to prove himself, he led 5,000 infantrymen north. After 30 days, they reached a mountainous region deep inside Xiongnu territory. Along the way, Li Ling mapped the terrain and sent messengers back to court. The messenger reported that Li Ling commanded his troops effectively and that every soldier was prepared to fight to the death. Emperor Wu was pleased. A few days later, the Xiongnu Chanyu arrived in person with about 30,000 cavalry. Li Ling's army was trapped between two mountains. He ordered the soldiers to arrange their supply wagons into a defensive barrier. The front ranks carried halberds and shields. Behind them stood archers and crossbowmen. Seeing how few Han soldiers were present, the Xiongnu cavalry advanced directly toward the camp. Li Ling waited until they entered range. Then he gave the order. Thousands of crossbows fired at once. The horsemen in the front ranks fell one after another. The first Xiongnu assault collapsed. Han troops pursued them up the slope and killed several thousand more. The Chanyu had not expected 5,000 infantrymen to inflict such losses. He summoned additional forces from the surrounding regions. Before long, more than 80,000 cavalry surrounded Li Ling. He could no longer advance north. His only choice was to maintain formation, fight continuously, and withdraw south. Over the following days, Xiongnu cavalry attacked from both sides of the valley. More Han soldiers were wounded by arrows. Men wounded in 3 places were placed on wagons. Those with 2 wounds pushed the wagons. Those with 1 continued to fight. The next day, Li Ling again drove back the Xiongnu and reportedly killed more than 3,000 men. He then continued southeast along his original route. When the army reached a reed-filled marsh, the Xiongnu set fire to the vegetation from the upwind side, hoping to throw the Han formation into chaos. Li Ling ordered his own men to ignite the reeds around them. By creating a second fire line, they deprived the approaching flames of fuel. The army then withdrew into woodland, where the Xiongnu cavalry could not maintain tight formations. Once again, the Han infantry used bows and crossbows at close range. At one point, their attacks forced the Chanyu to abandon a nearby hill. After repeated setbacks, the Xiongnu began to suspect that another Han army waited farther south. Perhaps Li Ling was bait. Continued pursuit might draw the Xiongnu into an ambush. Some commanders were already advising withdrawal. If Li Ling could move only a few dozen miles farther south and reach open terrain, the encirclement might break. Then one of his officers defected. The officer, responsible for guard duty, informed the Xiongnu that Li Ling had no reinforcements and that his arrows were almost exhausted. He identified the Han command post and described its banners, advising the Xiongnu to concentrate their best archers there. The Xiongnu immediately sealed the southern route. Xiongnu horsemen occupied the high ground and fired into the valley from every direction. Li Ling's army had already discharged hundreds of thousands of arrows. At last, the supply was gone. More than 3,000 survivors abandoned the wagons and broke pieces of wood from their wheels to use as weapons. The officers had nothing left but short swords. They were little more than 100 miles from the Han frontier. When darkness fell, Li Ling gathered the survivors. He ordered each man to carry a small amount of dried food and ice, then attempt to break through in separate groups. At midnight, the soldiers prepared to signal the breakout with drums. But the drums no longer sounded. Li Ling and another officer mounted the remaining horses and charged south with little more than a dozen riders. Thousands of Xiongnu cavalry followed. The officer beside him was killed. Li Ling's path was cut off. He told the men around him that he no longer had the face to meet the emperor. Then he laid down his weapon and surrendered. Of the 5,000 men who began the campaign, only slightly more than 400 escaped across the frontier. Li Ling and the survivors were captured or absorbed into Xiongnu territory. When the news reached Chang'an, Emperor Wu initially hoped that Li Ling had died in battle. When his surrender was confirmed, the emperor was furious. Court officials condemned him for failing to die with his men. Only one court historian spoke in his defense. Emperor Wu believed the historian was defending Li Ling while belittling Li Guangli's achievements. He sentenced him to castration. That historian was Sima Qian, author of The Records of the Grand Historian and one of the most important historians in Chinese history. More than a year later, a captive claimed that Li Ling was training Xiongnu troops, making it impossible for the Han army to approach. Emperor Wu believed the report and ordered the execution of Li Ling's mother, younger brother, wife, and children. Only later, when Han envoys met Li Ling, did they discover that the man training the Xiongnu army was another Han defector. But Li Ling's family could not be brought back, and the Han court could not undo an order that had already been carried out. The Xiongnu did not execute Li Ling. He had personally led tens of thousands of cavalry and still needed days to force 5,000 Han infantrymen to surrender. He therefore valued Li Ling's military ability. The Xiongnu gave Li Ling one of his daughters in marriage and granted him the title of Right Commandant King, or Yuxiao Wang. Within the Xiongnu system, this was a powerful regional position. 1 year before Li Ling's surrender, his former court colleague Su Wu had been sent to the Xiongnu as a Han envoy. After a member of his delegation became involved in an assassination plot, Su Wu was implicated. The Xiongnu tried to force him to defect. When he refused, he was sent to an isolated region near Lake Baikal, in what is now Russia, and ordered to herd rams. After Li Ling received his title, the Xiongnu gave him a task: persuade Su Wu to submit. By then, Su Wu had spent years in the frozen wilderness. The Xiongnu did not supply him regularly. At times, he survived by digging into rodent burrows and eating stored seeds. Yet he still carried the ceremonial staff identifying him as a Han envoy. Li Ling arrived with food, wine, and musicians. First, he told Su Wu what had happened in Chang'an. Su Wu's elder and younger brothers were dead. His mother had died. His wife might have remarried. No one knew what had become of his children. Life was brief, Li Ling told him. Emperor Wu had become unpredictable in old age, and many officials had been punished or killed without clear cause. Even if Su Wu remained loyal, no one at court might ever know what he had endured in the north. Li Ling was not speaking only for the Xiongnu. He was also speaking from experience. He had once believed surrender might still leave open the possibility of returning. Instead, his family had been executed before he could try. In asking Su Wu to stop waiting, Li Ling was explaining why he himself had stopped. Su Wu refused. His family, he said, had received imperial favor for generations. Once he accepted his mission, he had already committed himself to dying in the service of the state. If Li Ling insisted on forcing him to surrender, Su Wu declared he would kill himself as soon as the banquet ended. Li Ling called him a righteous man. He then said that his own guilt could never be erased. He left in tears. Several years later, the Han and Xiongnu resumed negotiations, and Su Wu was permitted to return home. Li Ling held another farewell banquet. He rose, performed a sword dance, and sang of his campaign, marching 10,000 miles into the desert, losing the road home, watching bows break and soldiers die. His mother had been killed. Even if he still wished to repay the Han Empire, he no longer knew where he could return. After the banquet, Su Wu traveled south toward Chang'an. Li Ling remained on the steppe. The two men had once served together in the imperial court. One became the symbol of an envoy who refused to surrender. The other entered history as a general who did. Later, Emperor Wu died, and a new ruler took the throne. The Han court sent one of Li Ling's old friends to the Xiongnu. The envoy hinted that the new emperor had issued a pardon and invited him home. Li Ling refused. Returning, he said, would not be difficult, but a man could not endure humiliation twice. He had adopted Xiongnu clothing. He had lived in the north for years. He had a wife, followers, and a political identity granted by the Xiongnu. No one could guarantee how the Han court would treat him. After this point, the Chinese record becomes sparse. It says only that Li Ling usually lived away from the Xiongnu's central court, and that, at one point, the Xiongnu moved him to the north to keep him away from internal conflict. But where was this northern region? The Han period sources do not say. 8 centuries passed. China had entered the Tang dynasty. In the 7th century, the Khagan of a nomadic people known in Chinese sources as the Xiajiasi, more commonly associated with the Yenisei Kyrgyz, crossed the desert and traveled to Chang'an. He brought furs and horses. He also brought a striking political declaration. The Xiajiasi, he claimed, were descendants of Li Ling. The Tang emperors, meanwhile, claimed descent from the family of Li Ling's grandfather, Li Guang. Therefore, the Xiajiasi Khagan and the Tang emperor were not merely diplomatic partners. They were members of the same family. According to the tradition presented by the Xiajiasi, Li Ling's story continued beyond the point recorded in the records of the Grand Historian and the Book of Han. He had eventually been assigned to Jiankun, a dependent territory at the northern edge of the Xiongnu world, which became his personal domain. 2,000 years ago, the people of Jiankun lived along the upper Yenisei River in what is now Siberia. Chinese histories, including the New Book of Tang, describe the early inhabitants as having strikingly West Eurasian features: red hair, pale skin, and green or light-colored eyes. This frozen land of taiga forests, far beyond the Chinese frontier, was said to have become Li Ling's final home. The Xiajiasi explained that Jiankun and Xiajiasi were different Chinese transcriptions of the same people, and Li Ling, according to this tradition, did not go there alone. He was accompanied by surviving Han soldiers captured after the failed breakout, pastoral followers assigned by the Xiongnu, and guards connected with the Xiongnu princess he had married. They settled permanently in the region. Later descriptions of the Jiankun population noted a group whose appearance differed from many surrounding people. They had black hair and dark eyes. When the Xiajiasi approached the Tang court, the dynasty was at war with the Turkic powers of the north. A people living northwest of the Turks who claimed kinship with the Tang house offered a valuable opportunity. The Tang emperor accepted the relationship. When receiving Xiongnu envoys, he reportedly declared, "Your country shares the same ancestry as ours and cannot be treated like other foreign states." The arrangement benefited both sides. The Tang gained a strategic partner against northern enemies. The Xiongnu gained recognition from one of the world's most powerful empires. This supposed kinship later acquired real geopolitical importance. By the mid-9th century, the Tang Empire had been weakened by the An-Lushan rebellion. At the same time, the Uyghur Khaganate dominated the northern steppe and pressured the Tang frontier. Then the Tang's northern relatives struck. The Xiongnu Khaganate mobilized a vast cavalry force, said in later accounts to number 100,000, and moved south. It destroyed the Uyghur Khaganate in a major campaign. When the Xiongnu captured the Uyghur royal camp, they found Princess Tai Hu, a daughter of the Tang imperial house who had been married to a Uyghur Khagan and had lived in the north for years. The Xiongnu regarded her as a member of the Tang royal family and sent envoys to escort her to Chang'an. Their attempt to return the princess was seen by the Tang court as a major gesture of goodwill. The emperor even considered entering the reigning Xiongnu Khagan into the imperial clan register, formally reinforcing their claimed kinship. After defeating the Uyghurs, the Xiongnu briefly controlled large parts of the northern Mongolian steppe. But they did not permanently occupy the former Uyghur heartland. Their main center remained far north, along the upper Yenisei River, thousands of miles from the Tang Empire. By the late 9th century, they gradually disappeared from the center of Chinese historical records. A new power then arose, the Khitans. After establishing the Liao dynasty, the Khitans controlled much of northern China and the Mongolian steppe, reducing the political space available to the Xiongnu. In the early 13th century, the Mongol tribes were united. Genghis Khan sent armies into the Yenisei region, and local tribes submitted one after another. Over the following centuries, the descendants of the Yenisei Kyrgyz came under the influence of Mongol groups, the Dzungars, and the expanding Russian state. Some remained in southern Siberia and later contributed to the formation of several local peoples. Others, forced to survive successive invasions and political upheavals, gradually abandoned the frozen lands their ancestors had occupied for generations. What followed was not a single migration, but a long movement lasting centuries. Thousands drove their herds across mountain passes and plains. They crossed the Altai Mountains, moved through deserts and steppe corridors, and gradually entered the Tian Shan region of Central Asia. There, through migration, warfare, alliance, and intermarriage, they took shape as the people now known as the Kyrgyz, or within China, the Kyrgyz ethnic group. This process changed both their language and geographical identity. Scholars still debate what language the earliest Jiankun people spoke. By the Tang period, Chinese sources already reported that Xiongnu writing and speech resembled those of the Uyghurs. In modern times, Kyrgyz is clearly a Turkic language. Religion changed as well. The Xiongnu of the Yenisei period practiced forms of nature worship and ancestor veneration, and cremated their dead. After entering Central Asia, they increasingly came under Islamic influence. Yet full Islamization occurred relatively late. Only in the early modern period did many Kyrgyz tribes widely adopt Sunni Islam, while preserving older traditions from the steppe. From the outside, they had become a recognizably Central Asian, Turkic-speaking Muslim people. But deeper layers of their past were not completely erased. Within the traditional Kyrgyz tribal structure, clan names associated with peoples such as the Khitans and Mongols survived. Some genealogical traditions even preserve names interpreted as China or Kitai. These old terms, embedded in family and tribal memory, resemble living fossils. They point toward the complicated ancestry of the Kyrgyz people. For a long time, this story was treated as a historical legend of doubtful reliability. The claim that the defeated Han general, Li Ling, produced black-haired, dark-eyed descendants in Siberia was especially easy to dismiss as political genealogy, an attempt by a later people to associate itself with the prestige of imperial China. It seemed difficult to believe that an organized group of Han Chinese could have survived for generations in a high-latitude region thousands of miles from the frontier. Unexpectedly, the challenge to this skepticism did not come from Chinese historians debating texts. It came from Soviet archaeologists. In the mid-20th century, Soviet teams entered southern Siberia and conducted large-scale excavations along the upper Yenisei River in the region associated with Jiankun. As the frozen ground was stripped away, excavators uncovered an extraordinary cultural mixture. In burial sites associated with the Tashtik culture, archaeologists found remains displaying traits traditionally linked with West Eurasian populations. But they also identified skulls with distinct East Asian characteristics. For some scholars, this suggested that the Jiankun population had undergone significant biological mixing around the 1st century BCE. The most dramatic discoveries came from architecture. Deep in the Siberian forest zone, Soviet researchers excavated the foundations of a large complex built in a style strongly reminiscent of Han China. In a region associated with pastoralism, hunting, and fishing, they recovered Chinese-style architectural materials. Among the most striking were roof tiles and decorative ends bearing Chinese characters, including an inscription that may be translated as, "May the Son of Heaven enjoy 10,000 autumns, everlasting joy in the Wei Yang Palace." The site also produced Han-style bronze mirrors and agricultural tools. Sergei Kiselev, a prominent Soviet historian and archaeologist, and other researchers compared these discoveries with Chinese descriptions of Jiankun's location. They believed that the dynastic records and the Siberian remains formed a coherent chain of evidence. According to this interpretation, the Chinese-style palace in the far north had served as Li Ling's political headquarters, while he governed the region as a Xiongnu-appointed Right Commandant king. Under this theory, the archaeological record seemed to settle the question. A Han presence along the Yenisei was no longer merely an isolated written claim. In the eyes of its supporters, it had become a historical reality anchored by buildings, artifacts, and human remains. The mixed population of Jiankun had created a durable refuge in the Siberian forests, where East Asian cultural and biological influences survived for centuries. In the 21st century, molecular anthropology added another layer of evidence to this 2,000-year-old mystery. Researchers from several countries studied modern Kyrgyz populations, particularly the Y chromosomes of Kyrgyz men. The most common paternal lineage in many samples was haplogroup R1A, often representing about 50 to 60% of the men tested. R1A is strongly associated with ancient Eurasian steppe populations and is widespread among many Indo-European-speaking peoples. For supporters of the Jiankun connection, this appeared to match Chinese descriptions of red hair, pale skin, and light-colored eyes among early inhabitants of the Yenisei region. But another set of results drew even more attention. Despite living deep in Central Asia and speaking a Turkic language, the Kyrgyz gene pool appeared in some studies to contain roughly 10 to 15% of East Asian O lineage Y chromosome haplogroups, especially OM122. Why was this significant? O lineage haplogroups, including OM122, are common among Han Chinese men and other East Asian populations. Among some other Turkic-speaking peoples of Central Asia, these lineages occur at lower frequencies. A proportion above 10% therefore seemed unusually high to some observers. Where had this East Asian paternal ancestry come from? Could it be explained by small-scale trade or recent migration? A whole genome study published in 2025 compared Kyrgyz populations from China's Xinjiang region with those from Kyrgyzstan. The researchers concluded that these populations had experienced more than one major episode of East-West Eurasian admixture. An earlier phase occurred about 2,200 years ago. A later phase took place roughly between 800 and 400 years ago. The earlier date overlaps with Li Ling's surrender to the Xiongnu. The later period overlaps with the Mongol era and subsequent migrations. But even this evidence confirms only that Western and Eastern Eurasian populations mixed. It cannot identify Li Ling as the source. Modern genetic research faces an unavoidable problem. No authenticated remains of Li Ling or a confirmed direct male line descendant have been tested. We do not know his Y chromosome haplogroup. Without such a reference, no geneticist can identify a modern Kyrgyz lineage as Li Ling's DNA. Modern genetics, therefore, does not complete the chain behind the claim that the Kyrgyz are Li Ling's descendants. What it demonstrates is different, but still important. The ancestors of the Kyrgyz came from several regions of Eurasia. Eastern and Western populations were already mixing about 2,000 years ago, followed by further waves of admixture. The black-haired and dark-eyed Xiajiasi, described in Chinese histories, were therefore not necessarily a historical fantasy without biological foundation. But genetics cannot tell us their names. There is one more historical connection, one that may create even greater cultural resonance between China and Kyrgyzstan than the debate over Li Ling's descendants. It concerns the man widely regarded as China's greatest poet, Li Bai. Tang period sources state that Li Bai's family had once been exiled to the western regions. By the end of the Sui dynasty, they were living in Suyab before later returning to Sichuan. Based on this chronology, many scholars believe Li Bai was born in Suyab, near modern Tokmok in Kyrgyzstan. Others argue that he was born in Sichuan, and the question remains disputed. What can be said with greater confidence is that Li Bai's family had a deep connection with Suyab. The location of the Tang city is also supported by Chinese language inscriptions unearthed in the area. In another coincidence, Li Bai claimed descent from the Li Clan of Longxi. One was a defeated general, the other was a poetic genius. Across 800 years, the surname Li linked China's imperial heartland with the frontiers of Central Asia, creating a dense web of historical and cultural associations. For modern Kyrgyzstan, the tradition of descent from Li Ling is not regarded as a humiliating story of dependence. On the contrary, it represents valuable historical and cultural capital. Among the 5 Central Asian states, it gives Kyrgyzstan a distinctive narrative connecting it with the ancient civilization to the east. From a Chinese perspective, the story also shows how Li Ling's image has changed. Within the Confucian framework of traditional historiography, he was often condemned as a general who failed to die for his state. His surrender became a lasting mark of disgrace. But beyond the boundaries of a single dynasty, another interpretation becomes possible. Without intending to do so, Li Ling may have become one of the agents through whom Chinese and Central Asian populations, cultures, and memories came into contact. Through defeat, exile, and settlement, he became associated with an ancient connection between 2 regions of Eurasia. History is rarely divided cleanly between black and white. The hatred, violence, exile, and despair of 2,000 years ago did not disappear. Over centuries, they were absorbed into migrations, intermarriage, political alliances, and collective memory. Whether among Kyrgyz herders beneath the Tian Shan mountains, or among readers opening the surviving pages of ancient Chinese histories, the same fragmented evidence remains before us. Dynastic records, archaeological ruins, tribal genealogies, and patterns preserved in human DNA. Together, they reveal how human destinies can become entangled across thousands of miles and thousands of years.